Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade from 1989. This film's directed by Steven Spielberg, starring Harrison Ford, Sean Connery, Julian Glover, Allison Doody, and River Phoenix. The plot line from IMDb: in 1938, after his father, Professor Henry Jones Sr., goes missing while pursuing the Holy Grail, Professor Henry Indiana Jones Jr. finds himself up against Adolf Hitler's Nazis again to stop them from obtaining its powers. This movie, and why I put it is number one, I think it's one of the better films, at least that resonate with me too, about the relationships between fathers and sons on screen. And it's sort of an encapsulation of a lot of the themes we've already talked about, in terms of, replacing the father, having that strict parent, the loving parent, like all these different things, in terms of that relationship with your father. But the key thing in this film, I think that is really resonated with me, is that relationship changes as you age, more so than mother relationship. I feel is a lot more of like, you love your mom and your mom sort of helps you return to that safety of being a child and you feel protected and safe, and a father relationship, and that is always, I feel like, what you will have with your mother as you get older. And with your father, I think the roles change in terms of what your father can and should and does do for you in your life as you get older. Even after you replace the father, like Indiana Jones does in this movie, in a sense, there is still a need for your father in your life in some ways. So I think this movie really does show that, there's the MacGuffin in the film, right, is Indy is trying to search for the Holy Grail. Which I think is also a great representation for that father-son relationship. I mean, it's something you're searching for that might not, it is a magical thing that is in a way something you can't attain, but you're trying to, through your entire life, just develop that relationship you have with your father. I mean, the son in this film, Indiana Jones, he basically did follow in his father's footsteps. Like, he's also an archaeologist. He's also, a little afraid of a specific animal. Like, his dad didn't like rats. He doesn't like snakes. There's a lot of parallels there between the two. I mean, he's clearly his father's son, but at the same time is trying to find then his own path, even though it's a path that, his father was on before him. And I think that's what this movie sort of talks about as the film develops and goes on, in terms of the plot of how, he's measured up against his father. He clearly has a chip on his shoulder in a way of like, well, I'll never be like my dad. But it actually, like, he is, he's the one who does find the Grail, with the help of his father, though. His father's book, like his father's lessons, taught him how to then be, even a better archaeologist than his father. He was able to accomplish what his father never could in his career. So I think that just definitely exemplifies how the father and son relationships can change over time, because again, it's like that resonance of those lessons. I think, what also is great is that scene in the film where they have just escaped the Nazis. And there's a nice, really quiet moment where they're on a Zeppelin, they think heading off to freedom before the Nazis realize they're there. And then it's, Indy's like, look, like, we never talked. And he's like, okay, fine. What do you want to talk about? And he's like, I don't know. And it sort of shows that, like, he's like, look, did I ever tell you to, what to do, what to eat, to do your homework? No, I gave you self-reliance. Like, by being a distant father, that was my lesson to you. And I think that scene is important because it helps you understand, that Indy's father, even though he's very distant, and what Indy thought was, cold and maybe he didn't love him, actually was all out of love. And that strict upbringing was, he was trying to teach him these lessons of self-reliance, because to him, that was an important moral value. And I think, it helps you really understand how a father, like, wants to teach their son things, even if the son doesn't realize, what those lessons are at the time, and even might, misinterpret them. You can even look at through this, it's a religious artifact they're looking for, obviously. And in the Christian religion, at least, there's a father and son relationship between, God and Jesus. And I think this film mirrors a lot of those things by using a lot of that, Christian iconography in here. And yeah, at the end of the movie, yes, they find the Grail physically, but they leave it behind, because really what they found, the true Grail in this, is that loving bond that they never really were able to have growing up. Right. And at the end of the movie, they ride off into the sunset together. They've found salvation. Both of them now are the father and son that they had always maybe struggled to be over time. So I think, the older I get, I think this movie just resonates with me more and more, just about, the themes and how your themes of fatherhood, fathers and sons relationships, and how, again, over time, you never really outgrow your your father, even once you do replace them, there are still important journeys that you can go on together and learn just to be better people. Indy's dad also learned how to be a better person through Indy. So it's just, I think, one of the better movies that represents fathers and sons in the same spirit of Superman. But in this film, they get to both live at the end, instead of unfortunately for Superman's, both of his dads had to die for him to learn. But at least he was able to learn from Henry. Indy was, which I just think is a great relationship that you get to track over the course of the film.
Yeah, such a great movie. I had never seen this movie until a few weeks ago, so always wanted to. Well, I lie actually. I watched Temple of Doom as kind of growing up, and that's the first indie movie that I watched.
Okay.
And I just didn't like it, which different people might have different opinions about that. So I sort of stayed away from Indiana Jones movies for a long, long time because of that, because I was like, this is just silly.
Yeah.
Of course, knowing that these movies are great, but I was very happy to watch this movie. You couldn't have said it better. The one thing I would point out is that I think this movie also highlights a little bit of that competitive spirit that fathers and sons can have. I
definitely.
certainly felt that with my father, especially right at that point where I was starting to become an adult, starting to have my own life, maybe knew a little bit more about certain things that he didn't, even though he has way more experience and deeper knowledge. And how do those two things sort of wrestle against each other, and how do you navigate that? And ultimately it's the love and respect that sort of keeps you going. But like you said, the relationship changes. At some point you have to come into your own as a son, but your father also has to start to see you as a man,
right.
And sort of let go of you, if you will. And so I love that aspect, and it's done obviously in a very fun, tongue-in-cheek way, which is amazing. What brilliant casting!
Oh my God, yeah.
Have
Connery's best role. Honestly, I think he's never been better than in
he's
this
never
movie.
been better. Honestly,
yeah.
I totally agree. Like, this is what he probably should have had an Oscar for.
Oh, agreed.
In my mind, like,
agreed.
He's so brilliant. And then the other thing I kept thinking of, like, not to again shit on superhero movies, because I do like him, and I know those movies are taking several pages from this book, but this is how you do it. It has all those trappings, but at the core of it, it's about relationships. It's about brilliant performances. Once again, it's entertaining, but there's breadth and space for characters and relationships to actually develop. And it's just those little things, that it makes me care more, that this movie sits with me and is not just, feed fodder that I'm now just waiting for the next one to come, and I've already forgotten what the previous one was. That's what they've built, without naming names, in my mind, their entire castle on, versus this movie lives with you because it has something to say. So I don't know, this is like the perfect blockbuster movie that is smart, entertaining, funny, moving, all at the same time, brilliantly done. And I can't wait for, speaking of fathers and sons, I can't wait for Spielberg's autobiographical movie coming out this year, because you see a lot of that here too. I mean, it's everybody knows that he's had a fraught relationship with his father, and in some ways this movie is probably repairing that a little bit from his adult eyes, perhaps. So I can't wait to see what the Fabelmans would be. I'm sure it'll be amazing. So
that's a really good point on Spielberg. I mean, like, his filmography, I mean, we talked a couple weeks ago about James Cameron and how, I think so many of his films are about mothers because of something. We don't really know a lot about that, but there's clearly his mother made a lasting impact on him. And for Spielberg, it's fathers. I mean, every movie is about dads because of the troubles that he had with his father. And it just is interesting that he then made a movie that had a happy ending with the father-son relationship. Like, the dad was distant, he was not there, but at the end of the day, Indy did learn to appreciate him, and his dad, like, much like you point out too, did learn how to let go Right. I mean, that competition angle, I think is a great point you brought up. And I think, this movie with the whole, him calling him Junior all the time is a way to put him down. Like, oh, you're Henry Jones Jr. This is the Indiana thing. And it's clear. And then you understand, oh, well, he took on that name because he was trying to step away from the shadow of his father by not having the same name, even though he ended up in the same profession, with the same, kind of quest to, find all these religious artifacts. Even in this movie, they're with the same woman. So it's like, you can't really.
That part was very weird, by the way.
I love that scene when the Nazi guys talk to them, and it's both of them don't know that the other one's been with the same woman, and they're reacting to it. I think that was so funny. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, they don't really. I think this is Spielberg at the height of his powers, arguably maybe one of his better movies in the top 3 in my mind that he's ever done. It's rare that they make movies like this anymore. Where there's the MacGuffin, and the MacGuffin's fun, and there's a lot of antics and roller coaster ride stuff that is there, but beneath the surface, there's a very strong messages and themes that this movie is dealing with throughout fathers and sons. And that's what makes it resonate even to this day and stand up over the test of time. It's not just like the roller coaster rides of the great action scenes, which there are many that are fantastic, but that's not why you remember the film. In the same way that Superman, I think, again, that film is timeless because those themes are there, and it's not just about the spectacle, even though the spectacle of him flying is still amazing and still works today, but it wouldn't be the same if it didn't have that meat behind it, which I think this film, again, is a perfect encapsulation of Father and Son's perfect Father's Day movie in my mind.
It's so good. So good.
Hey there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through 3 of our favorite movies. Subscribe right now, or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.